Hollywood has always sold the image of its stars as untouchable idols, perfect faces living dream lives. But what is rarely told is that some of the biggest actors of the golden age ended up behind bars, trapped in scandals, crimes, and trials that destroyed their careers. From silent film icons to heartthrobs of the big screen, many went from the peak of success to the cold floor of a cell. Some tried to clear their names, others never managed to recover their careers, and a few were forgotten forever, as if Hollywood wanted to erase their shame. Today, we reveal the story of those visitors to classic film actors who, instead of receiving applause, ended up hearing the sound of a door closing behind them. Are you ready? Let's get started. Fatty Arbuckle was the biggest comedian of the silent film era, a man who made millions and made everyone laugh. But his fall was one of the most brutal in Hollywood history. In 1921, Arbuckle hosted a party at a hotel in San Francisco filled with alcohol, luxury, and excess. What started as a celebration ended in tragedy. Young actress Virginia Rapp fell seriously ill and died days later. The rumors were immediate. They accused Arbuckle of being responsible for her death, and the press tore him apart. He was tried 3 times. In the first 2 trials, the jury couldn't reach a verdict, but in the third, he was fully acquitted. However, his career was already ruined. Hollywood turned its back on him. The studios broke their contracts, and he went from being one of the highest paid stars in the world to a man without work and a future. Years later, he tried to make a comeback, but his name was permanently tarnished. He died in 1993, with the certainty that he had been condemned without evidence. Robert Mitchum was the epitome of the tough guy in Hollywood, with his defiant gaze and bad boy attitude. But in 1998, his public image nearly vanished when he was arrested for possession of illegal substances during a raid in Los Angeles. The news was a total scandal. Photos of Mitchum behind bars ran in every newspaper, and his career seemed over. The film industry, which had sold his image as the dangerous heartthrob, now saw him as a real problem. He was sentenced to 20 days in prison and spent his time in a California jail, serving his sentence with resignation. But the most incredible thing is that his arrest didn't destroy his career. It made it more interesting. When he got out of jail, Hollywood marketed him as the actor who survived prison, and his fame only grew. Instead of sinking him, the scandal turned him into a legend of film noir. Paul Kelly had the face of the perfect man, the hero of many films in the 1993 and Neljakummentas, but his true story was darker than anyone could have imagined. In 1927, Kelly became involved with Dorothy Mackay, an actress married to screenwriter Ray Raymond. The passion between them turned into an obsession, and one day, Kelly confronted Raymond in a brutal fight that ended with the screenwriter's life. The scandal was massive. Kelly was arrested and sentenced to prison for involuntary manslaughter, and for 2 years, he lived as a recluse, far from the spotlight of Hollywood. But the most incredible part came next. When he was released from jail, he married Dorothy Mackay, the woman he had fought for. Surprisingly, he managed to return to film, and although his past always followed him, few in Hollywood dared to openly mention it. He died in 1996 with a career that survived the scandal, but with a secret he could never fully erase. Spade Cooley was the king of Western swing, an actor and musician who dominated the country scene in Hollywood. But his story ended in the worst imaginable way, with a crime that led him straight to life in prison. In 1996, Cooley began to suspect that his wife, Ella Mae Evans, was cheating on him. What happened next was one of the most disturbing tragedies in film history. Filled with jealousy and rage, Cooley brutally attacked her and took her life in their own home, while his Nelja-year-old daughter witnessed the horror. The trial was sensational and devastating. He was sentenced to life in prison, but before serving his full sentence, he suffered a heart attack in 1996 and died in prison. Karl Alfalfa. Switzer was one of the most beloved child stars of classic cinema, thanks to his role in Our Gang, The Little Rascals. But his story is one of the most tragic, going from child fame to misery and death under absurd circumstances. As he grew older, Hollywood completely ignored him. He tried to continue acting, but the roles stopped coming. To survive, he worked as a waiter, a dog trainer, and even in illegal gambling. Little remained of the funny child who made millions laugh. The worst came in 1959. A dispute over an alleged 50 payment ended in a deadly fight. Switzer showed up at a friend's house, demanding the money with a knife in hand. The altercation escalated, and he was shot fatally. He was only 36 years old. George Raft was one of the great heartthrobs of film noir, known for playing mobsters on screen. But what few knew was that his connection to crime went beyond fiction. From the beginning of his career in Hollywood, Raft had dangerous ties to figures in organized crime. His closeness with Bugsy Siegel, Mayor Lansky, and other real-life gangsters allowed him to stay protected, but it also put him on the FBI's radar. For years, his name appeared in investigations involving money laundering, illegal gambling, and financial fraud, though he always managed to evade the charges. He was almost convicted several times, but his fame saved him at the last moment. When Hollywood stopped protecting him, his career collapsed. He ended up ruined, forced to work in casinos and hotels in Las Vegas, surrounded by the same people who once helped him, and then let him fall. Lawrence Tierney was the quintessential gangster of film noir, playing ruthless criminals with an intensity that no one could match. But his worst enemy was himself, and his life offset was even more violent than the characters he portrayed. Since the 1990, his arrest record was endless. Bar fights, street brawls, run-ins with the police. Tierney was a magnet for trouble. In 1958, he was arrested for trying to strangle a man with a towel during a drunken brawl. As the scandals piled up, Hollywood stopped hiring him. During the 60-kumintas and 70-kumintas, he spent more time in jail than on a film set. The most ironic part is that, when Tarantino brought him back from obscurity in the 90-kumintas with Reservoir Dogs, his chaotic behavior nearly ruined his comeback. During filming, he stole a gun from the set and was fired. Lana Turner was the goddess of cinema in the 1990 and 50, an unattainable beauty who dazzled on screen. But her private life was filled with shadows, and her relationship with Johnny Stompanato was her worst nightmare. Stompanato was a low-level mobster linked to Mickey Cohen's organization. He became her partner, but their relationship was marked by violence and abuse. Turner tried to leave him several times, but he threatened to ruin her career and expose Hollywood secrets. Everything came to an end on a night in 1998. During a fierce argument at Turner's house, her 14-year-old daughter, Cheryl Crane, took a knife and stabbed him in defense of her mother. The trial was a media spectacle. The official version was that Cheryl acted in self-defense, but rumors pointed to Turner herself being the one who attacked Stompanato, and that the story was altered to protect her image. Although she was never convicted, her reputation was marked forever. Hugh Marlowe was the quintessential sophisticated leading man of Hollywood, known for films like All About Eve and The Day the Earth Stood Still. His image was that of a refined and trustworthy man, but off-camera, his financial life was a disaster. In the 1990, Marlowe was arrested for financial fraud in a scandal that Hollywood tried to bury. He was accused of being involved in a series of fraudulent investments, convincing investors to put money into projects that never existed. The case generated controversy, but the studios did everything they could to minimize the coverage of the scandal. Marlowe ended up paying a hefty fine and was on the brink of ruin, but he avoided a prison sentence. After the scandal, his career plummeted. Errol Flynn was the ultimate adventurer, the man every woman desired and every man wanted to be. But his private life was one scandal after another, and in the 1990 he came close to losing everything. In 1992, Flynn was brought to trial in a case that almost sent him to prison. The press turned the trial into a media circus, and his image as the perfect leading man was shattered. Although he was eventually acquitted, his reputation was severely damaged. From then on, his excesses with alcohol and financial troubles consumed him. His career declined until his premature death in 1999 at the age of 50. John Drew Barrymore inherited the last name of one of the most legendary dynasties in cinema, but his life was a spiral of self-destruction, arrests, and scandals. Son of the iconic John Barrymore and father of Drew Barrymore, he was never able to live up to his family's legacy. From a young age, he struggled with alcohol and the law. He was arrested multiple times for driving under the influence, public disorder, and street fights. In the 2019, he was imprisoned for failing to meet his legal obligations and was banned from productions due to his erratic behavior. The studios that once took a chance on him eventually closed all doors. He spent the last years of his life in ruin, living in the shadow of his famous surname and battling several health problems. Gig Young went from being a respected actor and Oscar winner to a life marked by violence and tragedy. His career reached its peak in the 2019, but his personal life was in ruins, with addictions, divorces, and an increasingly uncontrollable temper. He had multiple arrests for assaults and violent scandals. His abuse of alcohol made him unpredictable and dangerous, to the point where he lost major roles due to his erratic behavior. But the most shocking event occurred in 2019. Gig Young took the life of his wife and then took his own, leaving a note that was never publicly revealed. His end left Hollywood in shock, and the media quickly erased him from history to prevent the scandal from damaging their image. Wallace Beery was one of the most popular actors of classic cinema, known for his role in The Champ and his image as a tough but lovable man. However, his life off-screen was marked by dark rumors, including his alleged involvement in a crime that Hollywood tried to hide. In the 2019, producer Paul Byrne, husband of the legendary Jean Harlow, was found dead in his home under strange circumstances. Although the official version claimed it was a suicide, rumors within the industry pointed to Wallace Beery, along with two other powerful men in Hollywood, being involved in his murder following a brutal beating. The scandal never reached the press because Louis B. Mayer, head of MGM, allegedly covered it up and sent Beery to Europe for a while until the scandal blew over. When he returned, his career remained intact and he never faced any legal consequences. He died in 2019 without anyone officially pointing fingers at him, but the shadow of his possible involvement in Byrne's death remains one of Hollywood's best-kept secrets. Albert Dekker was a respected actor in both theater and film for his talent, but his life was surrounded by criminal scandals and ended in a death that left more questions than answers. Dekker worked in films like Kiss Me Deadly and Dr. Cyclops, but his political views and strong personality got him into trouble. During the 2019, he was linked to communism, which almost cost him his career in Hollywood. But the most unsettling part of his story is how his life ended in 2019. His body was found in his home under extremely disturbing circumstances. The evidence pointed to an accidental death, but the details were so strange that rumors about a possible murder or settling of scores never went away. Instead of conducting a thorough investigation, the industry chose to forget his name. Preston Sturges was one of the brightest directors of classic cinema, the genius behind comedies like Sullivan's Travels and The Lady Ave. But his wit and talent couldn't save him from falling into disgrace. Despite being a pioneer in sound film, Sturges made many enemies in the industry. His difficult personality, his demands, and his tendency to challenge the studios made him a problematic figure. When his success began to decline, opportunities dried up, and desperate for money, he got involved in shady business ventures. In the 2019, he was arrested for financial fraud after a series of dubious investments that collapsed. Although he didn't spend much time in prison, his career was destroyed. The studio saw him as a troublesome figure and erased him from the industry. He died in 2019 without money, without recognition, and carrying the weight of being one of Hollywood's great minds, who was ultimately forgotten by the very industry that turned him into a legend. Hollywood built legends, but it also destroyed them. Some of these actors fell due to their own mistakes, while others were victims of an industry that used them and then let them fall without mercy. From frauds and scandals to crimes that tried to be erased from history, these stories prove that fame is not synonymous with immunity or redemption. Some tried to rebuild their careers, others never managed to escape their fate. But in all cases, Hollywood's perfect image was stained by the truth. Which of these stories impacted you the most? Let me know in the comments, and join me in the next episode where we continue digging up the secrets that Hollywood tried to bury.